Welcome back to the morning show on Tobago Updates Television. We begin conversations this morning. We speak with Dr. Rahanna Juman, an ecologist who specializes in wetlands of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for having me on. Are
Indeed,
you
it is
hearing me?
for you to be here with us this morning. And we're speaking about the Sargassum Management Task Force. Of course, we know that there's a period where we see a lot of sargassum in our seas and in Trinidad and Tobago. First and foremost, I must ask: is there a season that we can expect to see this type of activity in our waters?
Well, initially, first of all, let me just go back. We used to always have sargassum coming up, but not at the quantities that we're seeing. Since 2011, more and more sargassum has been coming up on our beaches, and it has become sort of like the new normal, right? And while most of the times we record them between March to August, with it happening all year round. So there's no specific season. There's a time when we expect to see more of it, but we're noticing now that we're seeing it almost every time of the year, almost every month.
And of course, when it comes in such large quantities in some areas,
Mhm.
and of course it gives off that odor, that pungent odor, that we have to kind of try to cope with until it is removed and disposed of someplace else. And now we're talking about a task force, a management task force, in terms of course, removing the sargassum from the waters and taking them to another place where they can be disposed. What are the procedures in terms of removing, because there have been so many discussions in the space, is the right way, the correct way, what type of equipment we should have and we should use to remove this sargassum from the waters and dispose of them? What are the procedures, what are the methods that you have to employ to safely remove this sargassum from the waters?
So, so this has been happening for many years now, and I think you would remember in 2015 when everyone woke up and the whole of Speyside was covered with sargassum. And it's not only Trinidad; it's throughout the Caribbean, and folks have been trying different ways of collecting the sargassum. And in our ignorance, we would have used heavy equipment and barcodes and so forth, and we would have removed the sand. And when we remove the sand from the beach, we also contribute to coastal erosion. So there are methods where, using rakes and so forth, that you try to minimize the amount of sand that you actually remove from the beach at the same time. Also, too, we have to be cognizant that some of our beaches are turtle nesting sites. And when you use heavy equipment, you compress the sand and you could impact on the turtle nests. So all those things have to be taken into consideration. Now, we have in the last about 3 years ago, the Japanese government funded a project called National Sargassum Management Capacity in the Caribbean, and it is to be implemented in Barbados and Kitts Nevis and Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad and Tobago. And it's a $12 million US project, and Trinidad and Tobago is allocated around $1.9 million. And that is basically to buy equipment to assist us in removing the sargassum both onshore and offshore. And so we are about to receive that equipment. We have selected pilot sites both in Trinidad and Tobago to use this equipment to see how well they work, with the intention that once they work well, then we would be able to replicate throughout the islands based on the sea conditions. We have to look at the sea conditions as well, and what would be suitable for one area may not be suitable for another area. So all those things have to be taken into consideration.
I was also just about to ask that, in terms of how do you assess the efficiency of the equipment, and how do you implement it in terms of, as you mentioned, the sea conditions as well. In terms of the size of the task force that is embarking on this project, how are the resources being deployed for the different areas? Because, of course, as you mentioned, some of the areas are impacted greater than some others. You might have a larger quantity in some areas. How are you going to manage in terms of how do you disperse the resources that you have to ensure that you remove the sargassum effectively and in quick time?
So in Tobago, the Tobago House of Assembly has responsibility for the cleaning up of the beaches. In Trinidad, we have the regional cooperation. Under this Japanese project, we were ensuring that we have equipment purchased for both Trinidad and Tobago, and that would be given to the TIMA as well Tobago House of Assembly and through the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. And the intent is that they will make a decision as to where to, based on their priorities, where to deploy the equipment. For the pilot, we have selected Speyside to test the equipment, things like booms and barriers, or conveyors, as well as onshore equipment, rakes, tractors, and so forth. It will be lodged with an agency that would have responsibility for ensuring that it is given to whoever needs it, and there must be priority attached to that. In Trinidad, the same thing. It would be we're looking at some sort of local government agency that would have responsibility for allocated for allowing the equipment to be utilized by different areas or different regional corporation based on a needs basis.
So the
The
equip
intention is that also if the equipment, if we have tested this equipment, right, and it works and it's actually effective, the possibility of purchasing more for the different regional corporations and local, NGOs and so forth. So prior to the task force is a multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral task force made up of folks from not only the Tobago House of Assembly, but also from the Fisheries Division, Ministry of Local Government, Coastal Protection Unit, the ODPM, Office of Disaster and Preparedness Management, as well as NGOs. So we have the Nature Seekers and we have COPE as well on the task force. So, and we're working with a wider sector of stakeholders. So it's basically the task force would be coordinating activities amongst the different agencies, including not only government agencies, but private sector, NGO, community-based organization as well, to educate, to build capacity, as well as provide equipment for the cleanup and disposal, and also looking at how we can actually turn the Sargassum into something useful that could be beneficial.
Dr. Juman, you mentioned earlier that if the equipment, well, you keep saying if the equipment works, the equipment that you are purchasing or receiving for this particular cleanup, this assignment, this project, um, is there any reference in terms of it being using someplace, being used in another area, whether it's another part of the world or wherever? Additionally, is there going to be any type of training for the technicians who would be using the equipment here in Trinidad and Tobago? Because you don't want to make an investment in something that might or might not work. You want to have that measure of assurance that it will work or it will have some type of impact to assist in the project that you're doing.
Definitely. So once we receive the equipment will folks that would be utilizing the equipment, the regional corporations, the Tobago House of Assembly, they would be trained not only to use the equipment but also in maintenance, because we have a tendency of purchasing but we don't maintain. So the equipment will only last us as long as we maintain it properly and take care of it. So yes, training will be provided. The project again is all about capacity building, and building local capacity within these local areas so that we can actually be effective in how we treat with the removal of sargassum.
What are some of the things in terms of your research or experience or even knowledge? Of course, removing the sargassum and, as you said, finding useful benefits for it. Is there any that you can identify in terms of how it can be used to benefit the environment?
So a lot of folks have been doing experiments trying to look at uses for sargassum. We have here our University of the West Indies that's been doing a lot of research on it, looking at creating, plant stimulants, bioelicitors, things to deal with things like tomato fungus. The university as well creating plastics. There are folks that are using it for beauty products. There's now, we only recently heard of the Nature Seekers getting a grant to actually use it to create biogas, to melt bottles to make jewelry. So there is a number of things that are happening at the same time, a lot of research that's being conducted. A lot of things was being done prior to, and then they realized that when it's out in the ocean and it's an habitat, it's also performing a function in that it's absorbing a lot of pollutants. So they started to realize that it contains a lot of heavy metals and arsenic. So we have to be very cautious how we use it. So whatever use it's being put to, especially if it's going to be used for things like fertilizers, for body products, or pharmaceuticals, it has to be tested to ensure that the heavy metal concentrations are not toxic or not high.
Of course, you've seen a lot of options there in terms of benefits and different uses for the sargassum, which is welcomed. And of course, the research has to go into it to ensure the methods that are being approached or used are the best methods for, the redeployment or the reuse of the sargassum in that sense. Of course, we want to wish you the very best, and we do hope that the equipment gets here as soon as possible. We do have this situation right now. I can tell you for certain in Tobago, we definitely have that situation that we're dealing with. And so we're hoping that the equipment gets here, that the training takes place, and that the extraction of the sargassum is like almost immediate, effective, and impactful as well. In closing, is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers?
So I'll just say that we were expecting the equipment to arrive next year because the procurement takes a while, and they wanted to purchase for all the islands one time and wanted to make sure that what we purchase would be suitable for our environment. I just want to let folks know that, there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of information, education, right, in terms of the sargassum, what it does, what it brings in, how to treat with it. And again, even in terms of the cleaning, be cognizant of just going there and removing it with heavy equipment and so forth, because at the same time, you don't want to cause further damage to the environment. And you can also reach out to us at the Institute of Marine Affairs. We have a library, we have a lot of information that we're willing to share with folks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Juman. We've been speaking with Dr. Rahanna Juman, ecologist who specializes in the wetlands of Trinidad and Tobago, as we speak about the removal of sargassum from our waters. There's a task force in place, and of course, we're going to get that going in the soonest possible time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go for a short break before we continue conversations in studio with our guest this morning. And as we go for a break, of course, we invite you to help us share the live. Share the live. Share the live. We'll be right back.